A Weibo post that's been getting quite a bit of attention lately is a post that cites MarketWatch and claims that although Chinese-made products make up the vast majority of products being sold in the U.S., Americans could barely name a single Chinese brand. According to a survey released in April, only 6% of Americans that took part in the study could come up with only one Chinese brand name. Now, some respondents mistakenly identify Japanese brands like Honda, Sony, and Toyota as Chinese. According to some experts, it's been easier for China to simply build a product than to develop a brand. However, things are slowly changing, it seems, as Chinese manufacturers realize the profit potential for having branded items. For example, Herbalist, a popular Chinese cosmetic brand, is being labeled as made in Shanghai. Now, Chinese internet users have known for quite some time now of China's difficulty in pushing domestic brands abroad. So now let's take a look at what they had to say about Chinese brands.
China is truly lacking in recognizable brands. I'm not surprised that most people in America are unable to name Chinese brands. In this regard, we are behind the Japanese and the Koreans, and it's something that we need to improve on. From another point of view, it demonstrates how little average Americans know of the outside world. Most Americans still have the mentality that America will conquer the world. The same is true for China, though it shows we need to learn more about each other. Chinese people do have brands. We used brands for hundreds of years. It's just that in recent times, with our role as the factory of the world, Chinese businessmen are seeking more profit in manufacturing, so nobody bothers to make and develop brands. How did Japanese and South Korean brands become successful? I think it has mostly to do with the wealth of their people. There is still a huge income disparity in China, and I think when most of the Chinese population is able to reach middle class, Chinese brands would be able to walk forward to the world stage. Some Americans mistake Honda and Sony for Chinese brands. Well, that shows that Japanese need to work harder with their brands as well. You can't really blame this on the Americans. We have only ourselves to blame. We spent the last 30 years as a giant factory churning out made-in-China products, but we did not really create anything for ourselves. No wonder people think we are a nation of copycats. We haven't used our imagination for 30 years.
Although you don't see many Chinese brands on your store shelves today, it doesn't mean that it would stay that way 5 years or 10 years from now. According to experts, given China's size and economy, it's only a matter of time before the country begins exporting its culture and style to the West. According to the president of the Luxury Institute, Chinese entrepreneurs have no intention of merely copying the best, but rather they want to create brands that can rival or exceed their Western counterparts. In fact, shopping trends in Shanghai, Beijing, and Hong Kong might already be finding their way into a shopping mall near you, albeit in a subtle way. Now, Millward Brown provided a list of Chinese brands that they believe people should know and watch out for. And it includes Chinese banks like the China Construction Bank, the Industrial China Bank of Commerce, and the Bank of China. Now, the list also includes Chinese insurance companies like China Life and China Ping An Insurance. For manufacturers and producers, the list included Chinese brands such as Midea, Gree, and Haier, which are makers of Chinese home appliances. Shuanghui, Mengniu, and Yili, some of China's biggest food and dairy producers, as well as Lenovo, Baidu, and Tencent. Also on the list are Qingdao, Maotai, and Wuliangye, which are some of the most well-known distilleries and breweries in the country. Okay, and now let's get back to Weibo and take a look at what Chinese internet users believe are the challenges awaiting Chinese brands on the global market.
You can't rush this. To establish a good brand, you first need to have good quality. I think we need to first increase the quality of made-in-China products before we can even think about making a brand. Look at all the foreign brands in China. They are more popular than Chinese domestic brands. If we can't even have a handle on the Chinese market, what are the chances of success on the international market? China is a large economy, sure, but it's not a strong economy. There is a difference. The Chinese economy is large simply because of the population, but it is not strong because when you divide our economy by our population, you get a very small number. The reason why we don't have strong brands is because our products are simply not as well designed as international brands. Even though maybe they are all made in China, the foreign brands are simply well thought out. The problem is Chinese businessmen want to invest as little as possible and make as much money as fast as possible. You're not going to be able to create a brand with that kind of mentality. Creating a good brand takes years, maybe decades, and requires a lot of investment. You want to create a good brand, the first thing you need is not fame, but the trust of the consumers.
Besides exporting Chinese goods and Chinese culture, it seems that the vastly profitable Chinese market might also affect Hollywood movie storylines. For example, last year in a remake of the Cold War film Red Dawn, the villains were digitally changed from Chinese in the original to North Korean. Also in the science fiction movie Looper, scenes that were set in Paris were replaced with scenes set in Shanghai. And according to Phil Contrino, the vice president and chief analyst at boxoffice.com, producers will start to think more about Chinese tastes in their pre-productions to avoid losing valuable ticket sales. And that brings us to our next story. Whatever happened to Django Unchained in China?